Data Center Travel was released a year ago and was supposed to bring players together from across the region. Today, it has accomplished that, but at the expense of completely destroying the raiding scene of Primal and Aether. Here's me checking out Party Finder during the middle of the day on Primal. Since it is a Tuesday, you can typically expect to see tons of parties up for players looking to get their weekly loot. As you can see, there are 9 parties right now, and that's for all high-end content in the game. In case you're wondering, this isn't normal. Let's hop over to Crystal and see how things are there. Not many options here either. Only 4 parties right now. And no, this isn't normal either. Now let's check Aether. There are 101 parties right now when the other data centers can't even get more than 10. What happened? Let's rewind back to before Data Center Travel came out. All of the data centers had separate cultures and reputations that they were known for. Aether was the raiding focused data center. Crystal was known for leaning more into things like role-playing, with the infamous Balmung world helping to build that reputation, as well as having a strong PvP scene. That's not to say that they don't have raiders on Crystal as well, just maybe not as many as Aether or Primal do. Primal was sort of an in-between. As a Primal native, I can say that it had plenty of raiders as well, but also has a strong venue scene while maybe not being as roleplay heavy as Crystal is. We kinda just have a little bit of everything. Once Data Center Travel was released, everything changed. Players who weren't on Aether became interested in the so-called raiding promised land that Aether was supposed to be. Hoping to find better players and more options for who to play with, one by one, more became enticed by the Aether raiding experience. At first, it wasn't too bad, especially back in Abyssos, which came out a few months after Data Center Travel. You could still find plenty of parties, at least on Primal. Unfortunately, this didn't last. Fast forward to the release of Anabasios almost a year later. Primal and Crystal are both mostly dead as far as Party Finder is concerned. It's rare to see more than 20 up at a time. The self-fulfilling prophecy that Aether was better for raiding came to fruition. You basically have to travel to Aether now if you want to do any serious raiding and you don't have the static. This comes at a cost. You don't have the ability to interact with your free company, which means that you lose precious free company buffs for things like food duration and durability. You can't hang out with your friends when you're waiting to queue up again. You can't access retainers, you can't gather at time nodes. Lots of things are simply unavailable to you when you're not on your homeworld, and especially not when you're data center traveling. To no one's surprise, this has been really frustrating for players. Even if you don't care about most of these things, it still forces you to spend the extra few minutes going to Aether every time you raid. And let's not talk about the queue times to data center travel on patch day, because you can be stuck for hours. The negative effects of data center travel aren't just limited to raiding. Many of you have probably heard about how wild the Balmung quicksands can be. It's known as an ERP haven. What do you think happens when such an infamous part of the community is suddenly available to way more players than ever before? As you can expect, travelers flock to the quicksands, flooding them with players from all across NA, curious about the rumors that they've only heard about online. Now this maybe could be a good thing, except now you get people who have never experienced role-playing going there to troll and just join for the spectacle. Now personally, the quicksands experience isn't for me, but I've heard plenty of complaints from people in Balmung about how the place has changed and how data center travel has ruined the experience. This dilution of culture is bound to happen when opening up the gates like this. The same could be said for raiders too as far as culture is concerned. Different data centers will typically use different strats for fights. It's just kind of what happens when players have different ideas. Of course, this gets sort of stifled by the dominance of Hector guides anyway, but even within those strategies, regional variations can still occur. These days, that just can't really happen if everyone is just in the same place. Is that a bad thing? I guess it depends on who you ask. I personally really enjoy the creativity of the community and how they try to solve fights in different ways. Having less of that to me is a bad thing. At the very least, people still try and figure out their preferred strats in high-end raiding. It's just something that is less likely to be exposed to the average player without regional differences being present. Even outside of raiding and RP, you can still see this impacting other things. For example, when rare notorious monsters spawn in Eureka, other data centers often travel to take part in the fights. Now this isn't inherently bad because it means that there are more people to help, but it also makes it harder to form local communities, which I'd personally say is the charm of Eureka and Boja as well. Before, you'd have players being forced to stay on your data center, so you'd have more time to get to know them. Now, people travel to where they can more efficiently farm whatever they want. For the casual player who has no idea about the various discords and people coordinating these mass migrations, it can cause the content to feel sort of dead. Dynamis is a pretty good example of this, but that's a whole other can of worms that I'll address later in the video. Now let's talk about the impact on the market. Data center travel also means that market prices have a stronger normalizing effect. This is not a huge problem since we don't have an easy way in game to check prices across the region, but it's certainly noticeable that prices trend towards evening out more quickly now. If I want to buy something and it's 20% cheaper on another data center, it's easy to travel and save the guild. To stay competitive, your local market board sellers have to adjust prices now not only to what's on your world, but also what's on other data centers as well. Again, I'll emphasize that this isn't a huge problem and hasn't personally affected my profits much. Even so, it's definitely a bigger part of the equation here, so it's worth mentioning in any case. Now let's talk about the venue scene for a bit. If you hang out in Limsa or any other major city, you certainly notice people advertising venues in Shout Chat. I would say that it used to be kind of okay, but these days, it definitely feels like the chats are flooded with advertisements. Now that venues have way more worlds to advertise in, they are definitely taking advantage of it. This means that the potential for venue ads has tripled. Even in Party Finder in the Other tab, which is where most RP listings are posted if you didn't know, you will now see listings for events and venues in other data centers. For some, this creates more windows into what's going on elsewhere, but if you only care about your local scene, it's just extra stuff to filter out, especially when the same venue posts multiple parties up just to have more eyes on their ads. This is something that I've only ever seen an increasing amount of complaints about, especially on Reddit. The problem with this is that it kind of just makes the Shout Chat useless. You can't really have fun conversations anymore because it's full of ads. The frustrations here are well justified. Now, I won't say that it's all bad. There are plenty of things to love about data center travel, but before I get into that, I'm really close to hitting 1,000 subscribers on my channel and would love it if you help me to get there. I have a goal of hitting partner and getting monetized, which will push me towards my goal of making even better videos. Thanks again for being here, and let me know if you made it this far in the comments. So about the good stuff. Data center travel has definitely enabled people to make connections from a much larger pool of players. If you've ever met someone in real life that played in a different data center, you couldn't interact with them at all without losing the character that you might have poured hundreds of hours into. That's not a problem anymore, and that's certainly a win for the community. It also means that role players have way more opportunities to attend events and venues. Even for raiders, if you're in a static, you don't have to worry about transferring anymore. This means that you can push yourself to be the best player that you can be without worrying about possible static members being prevented from partying up with you. So there are positives for sure. Having an entire region's markets means that you can more easily get the cheapest possible price for the things that you want to buy. As far as Party Finder goes, once you are on Aether, it's certainly nice to have so many options available, more than you ever had before regardless of which data center you came from. Data center travel has also been huge for the organized PvP scene. Now, players from all throughout the region can play and compete together. Earlier this year, I entered the Mogtalk C3 tournament, which is a crystalline conflict event hosted by Frosty, who you may know from hosting the world race when a new raid tier drops. It was certainly a pleasure being able to play with teams from around the region, something that wouldn't have been possible before. The only complaint I have here about PvP is that it would be nice if it supported cross-world matchmaking because lots of players complain about how dead the queue times can feel unless you're on Crystal. It's also noteworthy that many events are able to be attended now, like the Infamous Beach Party or things like LunarCon. It's amazing that these aren't limited to attendees on the home data center of the event. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's Dynamis. I'm a firm believer that despite all of the issues, data center travel was necessary for Dynamis to exist. Why is that? I don't know if you've been to Dynamis, but it's definitely not as populated as the other data centers. It was a great opportunity if you wanted to get a home because there's suddenly 4 worlds worth of houses available. The problem is, leaving your data center is a really hard choice. Even if you can still keep all of your friends, you lose your home if you have it, and you lose your FC, which means that you don't get any of the benefits of being in one, like being able to easily talk to the people that you love playing with. You'll stop running into friends or parties that you might have enjoyed before. You lose a lot. And it really only makes sense to travel if you don't have many connections keeping you in one place, or you're really trying to get away from people that you don't like. Dynamis also has a reputation for being a home to people who may have been ostracized from their local community or just involved in drama for one reason or another. Overall, you should expect it to be nowhere near as populated as the other data centers. This doesn't just mean that you have less parties available. It also means that Duty Finder as a whole takes longer to throw you into content. It's not hard to understand how Duty Finder is such a core component to the game's experience. Imagine waiting tons of time to get into things like normal raids or trials. This system incentivizes players to replay old content, which helps to keep it alive. This relies on actually having the players present in the first place. There will definitely be times where Duty Finder is just slow on Dynamis. Data center travel gives Dynamis players the options to travel somewhere else if they are struggling to find players for old content. Is this a perfect solution? No. But I don't think that dooming Dynamis with the small population of a new data center would have been better. It's not like Crystal, which at least had some players because it ripped worlds away from Primal and Aether to establish a new player base at the start, and I think it's safe to say that no one wants that to happen again. The thing is, all of this is hopefully a temporary issue. We do know from live letters that cross data center Party Finder is being worked on. We can have some fun and imagine how this might work. Hopefully once it's available, that means that you'll be able to start a party from any data center and have people from all data centers joining you. These same benefits may extend to Duty Finder as well, which means faster queue times for everyone. Maybe this could lead to a shared ranking system for PvP. Imagine being the best player not only in your data center, but also the entire region. That said, I know that Square is being careful with this feature. The cultural problems I've mentioned aren't exclusive to North America. All regions have been experiencing different kinds of culture clashes because of this feature. Being able to party up from anywhere would only make it worse. So Square wants to think about how to carefully balance this. If you ask me, the culture clashes are worth the risk. I don't think that it's really feasible for them to let the game stay in this kind of state. There is no reason that Party Finder should be this dead on most of the data centers. So unless they remove data center travel, which they definitely won't do, we need cross data center party finder to fix this issue. Anyway, thanks for listening. Let me know what you thought in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.